Today on the CEO Barbecue, we're looking for copper in Peru and potentially other jurisdictions as well, together with Coppernico Metals. If you want a bullet point summary of this and all the other CEO barbecues in your inbox once a week, go to resourcetalks.com and subscribe to our free newsletter. Now, although the company you're about to hear from has not paid us for the production of this interview, you should still not treat this video as research. Research is conducted by reading the company's official filings, which you can find on setterplus.ca. In any case, please only watch this if you absolutely know what you're doing. This interview is intended only for experienced junior mining speculators because mineral exploration, development, and mining is an extremely tough business where failure is the norm and should be the expectation. This is going to be a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, and it is also going to contain forward-looking statements. I am not a licensed financial advisor, and my business sells content-producing services, which also makes me biased. Although this company has not paid for the production of this interview, it doesn't mean they won't become a client in the future. They might. So before continuing on, please talk to an independent investment advisor with a good long-term track record because your capital might be at risk. If you're not 100% sure you understand 100% of the disclaimers I just showed you, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said therein. That all said, Coppernico is listed as COPR on the TSX main board, where the average 3-month volume is about 150,000 shares. The stock's 52-week high is 54 cents and its 52-week low is 11.5 cents. With a market cap of just under 35 million Canadian dollars and 177 million shares outstanding, today this is a 19-cent stock with a 50 and a 200-day moving average, both at about 19 cents. Moving on to the share structure, management and directors are estimated to own about 1.5% of the company, while the CEO himself owns just under 4%. Close associates own over 1/3 of the company, and there's over 20% of institutional ownership. And that is on top of the 9.9% being owned by Teck and about 3.5% owned by Newmont, which means that about 1/4 of the company is in the hands of retail. I do see 36 million warrants here and 8 million options, where the latter expires in August of 29, strikes at 50 cents. That's for the options. And then the former, so the warrants, over half of them expire in May of next year with a 75-cent strike, and almost half of those 36 million strike at 30 cents, but they don't expire until August of 2029. All in all, the number of fully diluted shares is just over 221 million, meaning an increase of about 25% in shares outstanding could happen if all the dilutive securities get exercised, which would then result in about a 20% ownership dilution if, and that is always a big if, but if all dilutive securities actually get exercised. And of course, none of this accounts for potential dilution down the road, which is not unlikely given that this is a pre-revenue company that operates in what is a very capital-intensive industry. Talking about capital, I'll now go through their latest financial statement, which shows me the numbers as of June 30, 2025, so about 4 months ago now. And at the time, the company had, in total, it's actually about 3 months ago now, maybe I need basic math lessons there, but the company at the time had about 6 million Canadian dollars in current assets, mostly in the form of cash to the tune of $5.5 million, as well as expenses and account receivables on top of that. In terms of the liabilities, the current liability side of the balance sheet shows about $500,000 in it in the form of account payables, and that's mostly relating to concession fees for the Sombrero project, which of course we'll talk about in depth later on. There isn't any long-term debt on the balance sheet here though, and there is just a small $226,000 provision for site reclamation closure, but that's not long-term debt. Moving on to the P&L for the 6 months that ended on June 30, the total amount recorded as expenses shows up as $4.7 million. About 66% of that money went toward exploration and evaluation, which means that the administrative cost sat at just over $1.5 million for the period, which, to be more specific, is an average of about $260,000 a month. About half of that money goes toward fees and salaries and benefits, while about 33% goes toward marketing and investor relations, with office and administration, legal and regulatory combined making up the rest of that expense. As to the $3.1 million that was spent on exploration, it is note 10 that shows us the breakdown of that, where drilling is the largest chunk, representing about 55% of the total expense, with community and environmental sitting at about 22% and surface exploration at about 15%. All in all, that means that, again, in terms of exploration to administration, one of my favorite ratios, for the last reported 6 months, that number was about 66 to 34 in favor of exploration. And then another one of my favorite ratios is drilling to marketing ratio. Shows again, there's about 1.7 toward drilling and then about $500,000 toward marketing, which means roughly 3.5 times as much money went toward drilling as it did toward marketing. As always, though, I would like to remind you, be cautious. Your capital is at risk, and please visit centerplus.ca to view the company's full financials for yourself. Enough accounting for now, though, because I've got a brief overview of the company here. And ultimately, the story of Coppernico is one of, well, as the name suggests, copper. And it's copper in Peru specifically. And although that may be changing soon, which again, Ivan and I will discuss later on, the focus still remains Peru, and particularly the Sombrero project, which Coppernico has. They have a big claim for it, really, because they believe it's an analogy to Las Bambas, which, as you can imagine, I will be questioning later on. Sombrero is in the Ayacucho department of southern Peru, and there's over 8,200 meters in 20 holes that have been completed on the project to date, confirming widespread skarn alteration and sulfides, but no major discovery yet. And the current permits allow for up to 49 holes from 38 pads, although the plan, as far as I understand it, is to expand the permitted footprint here shortly, and that will hopefully be part of the conversation as well. I've also, again, heard Ivan refer to them currently evaluating additional assets in what they call complementary jurisdictions to combat, I suppose, that seasonal nature of exploration that in that part of Peru. So whether that is or isn't in North America or in South America is hopefully something that we can touch upon later on in the conversation. And of course, permitting risks, community relations, infrastructure, financing, partnerships, new projects, and everything else in between, hopefully later on in the conversation as well. But for this to actually become a conversation, I might have to shut up already. And Ivan, I'll give you the word here. But first of all, thank you for sitting down with me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
The pleasure is mine, and I am looking forward to this full conversation. But since this is your first time on the barbecue, we'll have to go through the smell test first. But just before we do that, actually, the focus clearly remains on Sombrero for you right now. And when I look at it, or I still think, and I just listen to you, and I know you're very bullish on this project. And the question pops up for me: but why? Given that there's been over 8,000 meters of drilling, hasn't delivered the discovery you might have hoped for on the first go, why keep going at it?
Yeah, because the discovery that is already there, we haven't expanded yet. So there's 8 holes that have expanded the start of a big skarn system, which measures quite large. That was the fundamental third dimension that we were looking for. Where we did our 8,000 meters, it was in predominantly covered areas. They wasn't in the most preferential areas in terms of exposure. And subsequently, we just announced channel samples, a lot of tens of meters of over 1% copper at another target called Nioc, which also is one of the most robust areas. This is a massive system. We knew this early on. The thesis is that we're extending a world-class copper trend, copper gold trend in southern Peru. And some of it's exposed for erosion, other parts are not. Permits are tricky. If we could have drilled where we wanted to first, we would have drilled in these 2 prolific areas, but we wanted to get on the project and we didn't miss. We actually confirmed the big skarn systems present. And if you're familiar with skarn mineralization, you can be 500 meters away and still be hitting the system geologically from the sweet spots. We have a better handle on that. We think we're close, but as we resume drilling sometime next year, we'll be following up where these 8 holes that hit are, and that'll give us a lot of the keys to how the system twists and turns back to where we were drilling. So money's not lost. Money was spent well. The biggest takeaway from us is the system's real. The biggest challenge we face is actually just timing of permits versus, robust targets that have a lot of incredible grade or some past drill holes in them.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're touching upon very interesting stuff there: permits, drilling timing, the different targets that you have, as well as how you rank them. Hopefully all things that we'll touch upon later on in the conversation. But this sets the stage nicely. We'll be back here in a couple of minutes to a lot of that. But as I said, smell test first. And I'll be starting off with yourself as a CEO of the company. Who are you and why do you think you're the right man for the job?
Yeah, so I've been in this business for 25 years. I started as a stockbroker buying mining stocks during the dot-com era because I understood geology, took geology in high school, had a passion for it. I grew up in Vancouver where a lot of junior mining startups are. And when I read a book on Warren Buffett, I learned a lot about being a contrarian. Early days there, I was financing a gentleman by the name of Dr. Roman Shkalenko, who had found or been part of six major discoveries around the world. And I learned a lot from him. I switched over from the brokerage side to the entrepreneurial side because I saw a lot more fun, a lot more focus. You would focus on your company versus 200 for clients. And the reward was appealing. If you found a gold mine, that was the ultimate dream, to find a 5 million ounce gold mine. I went to Mongolia in my early 20s, 23, 24. I flipped some properties with some former clients, made my first pass financially there, and then was able to create Keegan Resources with a partner of mine, Sean Wallace. And we went to Ghana on our seventh project, and a company that we started in Nevada with ended up in Ghana with. And we found a 5.2 million ounce gold mine that's now producing 250,000 ounces a year. The share price went from pennies to $9 a share to a 920 million market cap at its peak. And now it's producing gold. As that company performed, once it got to about $8 per share, became a feasibility development story. That was not my interest at the time. I prefer finding it because that's the best way to get a return in this sector. So I'm driven by discovery for the excitement of finding something new, but also the share price performance. And you get to get yourself involved socially from the very beginning and impact people, even at the modest level before things become a mine. I left to go and spearhead Caden. Caden, we drilled 100 holes in Mexico. We hit 100 holes in a row. This was the third asset of the company that we had. Ended up selling it to Agnico Eagle in 2014 for 205 million. If you had shares at the time, you got 360 per share. If you had shares of Agnico today, it's $20 per share, about 10 years later after that transaction. So we chose shares in that transaction. Agnico is an incredibly well-run company by Sean Boyd leading that charge. I learned a lot from him in that transaction about a lot of their successes in everything I do in this business. It always teaches you something new. I moved on to a Nevada project called Gold Standard, where the North Dark Horse discovery was made, and there was a great discovery in Nevada. Company went from 50 cents to $4, did extremely well during its tenure, and then formulated Orin Resources with my partners from Caden and Keegan, and we went out raising over $100 million, which I believe was one of the top exploration budgets in the world from 2015 through 2020, looking for tier one type of discoveries. And that's where Coppernico's main asset, Sombrero, came from, as well as a silver opportunity in Peru in tier one silver, and Fury Gold Mines, which has got Committee Bay and is the main flagship in Canada. So came to a flexion point in COVID. We thought today was yesterday, meaning COVID, that the market was starting. Thought it was prudent to split the company into three and segregate the investors to be gold, silver, and copper focused. There's a lot of reasons behind this, but ultimately we didn't have our social access in Peru at Sombrero. We kept ourselves private until we got it, which took a bit longer because of the COVID interruption. And the other two companies, they traded above the highest value of Orin, which went off the board at 320 per share with 100 million shares out in the first quarter of the following year. And then they proceeded to be victims of one of the worst commodity sectors for juniors that I've seen in my career of 25 years. And now we're turning the corner. What's really spirited me to persevere through all of that has been the scale and the opportunity for tier one discoveries across each company. And I've written checks, a lot into Orin. I wrote them into each of these companies, and I've stuck with them. Stuck with them to try and see that big discovery. And now we have a backdrop that can make up for a bit of the dilution that we've endured, but we have the assets. And the one thing I've learned that's a massive takeaway from this sector, it's not about money and share price and performance as much as it's about the asset. Assets first, people are second, and then the rest falls into place. I'm not looking for a 3 or 4 million ounce gold discovery equivalent. I'm looking for a 30 million ounce gold discovery equivalent. And I've learned that journey is a lot longer and harder. And those challenges are out there for a reason. Those big ones are tough to find. But I've seen other companies such as Filo Mining, which was year 23, before they hit that big hole and took off to $35, $40 per share, got bought by BHP. A lot of the big discoveries seem like they happen overnight, but there's decades behind them. So I don't feel special for how much time I've waited. The first stock I ever bought was in 1995, got in a car accident in high school. And my dad was pretty close with Robert Friedland at the time. There was a company called African Minerals, which is the Ivanhoe today. It took 17 and a half years to go public and become where it is, to get to market. And when it went public, it had gone from as high as $4 privately. It opened and went to 50 cents. I bought more shares right there right away. I sold early, unfortunately, to do other business, but I've seen what time takes on great assets and what it can achieve in the long term. My passion is exploration. My goal is scale. And the teams I've had the luxury of working with have made me better at what I do. And they're a massive part of the successes I have going forward. But I've had a chance to work with some incredibly smart people along the way.
Do you currently spend any time running any of the other companies like Tier One or Torque or any of the other names that you're also, they're your sister companies? Are you involved in them? Do you spend any time running those?
Yeah, so well, Tier One, I'm the chair of the company. Peter Dembicki is the CEO. He's been short of a market, but he's been a great CEO. Has a lot of energy, a lot of capability, extremely marketable, and he is a great asset. I've helped with support him in terms of the finances needed and navigate some tough times, but I don't overstep there much. My day job is Coppernico full time. On Torque, they were an inflection point, needed help with a raise. I helped them there. I am a major shareholder of that company and I love the asset. I love the deal with Goldfields that they've done. I think there's a lot of value to come out of that. So I help, but I don't run the day-to-day there either. So I've taken a big step back on other companies I'm involved in. I come in as needed when needed, but my focus is 100% Coppernico is my main focus.
And at Coppernico, you're noted as 3.7% of the company. What's the average cost that you've paid for those shares? Because you said you've been essentially bankrolling the company financings as well and so on. So yeah, what's your average cost?
Yeah, so it's a little difficult to tell because I put over 5 million into Orin and I bought it from $1 to $4 per share, just under $4 per share. That's where my cost base came for the majority of my position. My average cost on Orin was over $1.06 per share. And when we split the companies, I bought another $1 million worth of Fury Tier One and of Coppernico. I believe I put another 200,000 to 300,000 into Coppernico since we spun it out, somewhere in that range. I don't have the exact number. And so I don't really have a set cost base. I know it's high because of where things are at. I mean, if Tier One takes off, then my cost is zero. If Fury takes off, my cost is zero. So it's a split process in terms of how that works. I could give it 30, 40 cents per company and divide it equally. But as far as I go, I'm motivated more by how much it could be worth and the size of my current position of what it is. The money is there enough that it certainly matters to me of what I put in. The more money I make in this industry, the more money I tend to put back into it. And I've got an unhealthy ambition for discovery. So I'm always going to keep writing checks. If I do get liquidity on any other ventures, I'll become a much larger Coppernico shareholder going forward. That's based off of the geology, the opportunity, and some strategy we have potentially in the near term.
That's more or less exactly what I'm looking for asking here, because especially with people who have had previous successes as yourself have done well financially, how do I know you're incentivized enough? Because I mean, you're saying $5 to $6 million here you've put into these companies. Essentially, that's a whole lot of money for me.
Mhm.
Is it financially important to yourself? Is kind of what I'm wondering here.
Yeah, after the last 3 years, it's tremendously more important because my portfolio has done what everyone else has done. Money's worth more the longer you wait for something to work out. And I don't measure it differently, but it's top of list for me. It's life changing if it works out. I have a large position and I have a goal to get into multi-billion-dollar double digits with the company, and that would be significant. There's a lot of luck and risk behind these swings that I take, and the bigger the swing, the bigger reward you can get. And we're in a perfect backdrop for a market. But hypothetically, if I did have a big win in one of the other companies I'm involved in, I would double, triple, quadruple my position into Copernico. I would buy every share I could underneath the 50-cent price or beyond if the market is, if that geology is working with it. No shortage of passion and desire to own more, just shortage of liquidity, full disclosure at the moment. But to put things in context, a lot of people trade the space. I don't. I'm a long-term vision, long-term investor. But if I do have more wins right now, I'd rather buy more Copernico than buying other fixed assets that wouldn't return, because I believe it's really going to give here in the end.
The rest of the insider ownership is on the lower end. I think it's 1.5, 1.6%. Though, is that something you have the ability to incentivize for, and are other insiders planning to be supporting the stock in the open market, or how do you grow the skin in the game? Essentially, here's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so some of the board members come from major mining companies. As you know, they don't pay huge rewards like a Discovery would offer. Other people, lawyers, CFOs, different backgrounds. I'm not too worried about it. There is definitely a lot of support. We've been in a few tough spots where we were short cash, where we were raising money, and directors have stepped up to put up the money for it. There's no shortage of dedication and commitment to the company. But as far as that, I'm more interested to pick the brains of some of the people I work with to strategize, deliver the best results. In my view, market wide, the CEO should have the most skin in the game. Your board can change from time to time. Your management team can change from time to time, but the CEO is the one that's got to pull it all together and make it work. So in terms of me, I mean, if they had the big financial windfalls or the extra capital, would they step into it? I wouldn't doubt that they would. I've seen them invest before. Well, that's the perspective there.
Well, talking about other insiders and incentives here is essentially where I want to go with this. I believe that's one of the most important concepts in finance. Do you personally, or any of the other insiders, again, personally own a royalty on any of the projects?
No, no. The projects are all fully owned by the company, independent of any conflicting ownership with the insiders.
Got it. No royalties at all on the projects, previous owners or anything?
Small royalty to Acetos Arequipa, who owns the Fieraso and Nioc concessions. That's an 80-20 joint venture. If they don't participate, it would scale back, natural dilution to a typical royalty there. That's the only one that could occur if we did not collaborate and merge at some point down the road, which we might consider. All things are on the table.
Still on the same topic, still within our smell test here, and still talking about incentives, and specifically 2025 incentives, maybe. How are you going to measure success internally? And why I'm asking that is because I want to better understand how executive and director compensation is going to be determined to reflect that potential success. How do you measure? What are the KPIs? What are you looking for?
Sure. So I'll start off with myself, then I'll work through my team. I haven't taken a bonus at all with Copernico, period. And I'm not looking for any bonus. I've not increased my salary. I've not asked for any more stock options. And we've been able to solve the communities, bring it online, drill, do a lot of huge milestones and achieve those. I've compensated my team instead. Not because I don't deserve it. I know at some point, if the company's successful via share price, then I would look to get some remuneration from that. But what I've done is I put my team first. I believe I'm the third or fourth highest paid person in my company. I put a lot of value on both my geologist, my Peruvian counterpart, Christian Rios, and my CFO before I put it on myself. I need the best team I can possibly have. They are doing the day-to-day toughest parts of the job, and they deserve to get the respect from that. I have had some good financial windfalls. I don't need it as much, and I'll write more checks in the company, buy more shares. But at some point, my biggest return is going to be actually from my share price performance if things work out, and that's where I've measured myself. So as far as 2025 goes, we had a mandate to drill a lot of holes successfully. We've been under budget the entire year. We've made some adjustments along the way that support that, but we have not gone over budget with Copernico as of yet. We are scaling up marketing a bit here in the fourth quarter. That's the one place we might spend a bit more because the market's improving, and we have a lot of catalysts and a strategy that we want to go and employ. We are looking to add a couple assets to the company. We've had a lot of success with the portfolio approach. Each of the companies I've been part of has always had more than one asset. That mitigates permit delays, time delays, commodity risk sometimes, or geopolitical stability, concerns and issues that can come up as well. We've chosen the US. We have reviewed and intently at about 67 projects and we've narrowed down to a few that are top of list. One is pure gold. The other one is gold and copper, or copper and gold, and they both would measure in comparison to Sombrero by scale, multi-kilometer targets, tier one kind of look analogs of major potential systems, and they would have multi-targets, meaning you couldn't kill them with one drill program. We're looking at doing things with favorable timing in those two commodities. As you've seen, Newmont, Barrick, Agnico, I believe now is venturing a bit into copper. The perfect blend that I've learned and studied and kind of realizing is gold and copper. Gold for sizzle, stock, copper for steak. Sometimes you get both with gold or copper if you have grade on either side. But it's time to be a bit more aggressive with the plan because the market's there to support it. And if we start to create value, as you've seen in several companies with drill results lately, you can get paid for it. Again, my biggest concern as a CEO is not the marketplace, and never was. It's always the asset. Do I have the right asset? Do I have a big enough asset that could pay people for the time and give us that reward that I'm shooting for, which is the double digits, in a multi-billion-dollar market cap. And that's what I've been trying to line the company with our team. So the KPIs in 2025 was to identify and acquire some of these projects. And we're in the final quarter, hoping to get some of these deals done in the next 4 months.
This might actually be a good segue into talking specifically about the business plan here, Ivan, going back to some of the things you said at the beginning. What are the objectives here? I mean, optimize for Peru discovery and then potentially, again, that transaction, a transaction there if there is a discovery, or would you want to build out a portfolio of projects that you'd then be able to either, again, transact one by one or just option them out or something else entirely? What's your business dream, I suppose, for Coppernico?
So there's a lot of optionality when you make a discovery, should you make the discovery, right? And there's an optionality in value and how big you get and what you do next. Not every discovery, Keegan, we found over 5 million ounces. That used to be the benchmark for a sale. We had to build it. It was never sold. And Caden, we drilled 100 holes and we sold it. There was a flexion point in the geology where you make the decision or the project makes the decision for you. What's the best path to take? I've learned of when to sell it, how to sell it, and what stage you're being too greedy and you should take the check, or what stage you need to get it to and how to do it intelligently so that it's a marketable asset for the next person to buy it. So transactionability is certainly there, and we are transactional. On the flip side, you can't guarantee a sale even if you find it, right? So then you have to look at, what do I do if I get to $12 a share and I am a 3 or 4 billion market cap company? You need to grow. And how do you grow? Where do you grow? So we've been developing the pipeline of growth, which you'll see here in the next 6 months come to fruition, which will give us a pipeline of things that could also grow further and create something bigger on the bigger scale that may attract better buyers or may give us the currency and the ability to transform ourselves into a developer as well as an explorer. The perfect goal would be if you were not able to sell your discovery at a significant share price return to a major mining company that's going to mine it, it would be to merge or convert into a producing company that's self-financeable and has one of the best premier exploration pipelines in the world. Either way, how do we create the best value for shareholders? What is the best way to the best share price? My ego is my share price, and if it can perform well, then I'm extremely happy. The communities we impact come before that, because whether we find it or not, they're going to be affected by our presence for many decades to come. So we put communities first. The discoveries there, great, but what gives us the best share price? As far as fuel in the tank, I'm 48 years old and I feel like I'm just at the beginning of my career. I feel like the next 20 years will be my legacy, where I get a chance to take massive swings at some massive projects. And if you look back on your career and you ask yourself, why did I have all this success? I've had multiple things that have worked out. It's so I could attract extremely great people and great assets that I can take and monetize going forward. What do I do with them? There's enough buyers out there for high quality copper assets and or gold assets in the world. And it's a time where discovery is becoming more challenging, no shortage of capital, just a lot of the easy ones have been found. And going forward, I think you're going to see a perpetual performance in the mining sector, even though it's cyclical. We're going to have a pretty good ride here in the next 5 to 10 years that I don't think ever goes away, because technology is asking for more copper and copper grades are going down. A lot of gold mines, the big ones, have been found. A lot of pits are getting deep across all commodities, and there's more people on the planet.
Very important there that there a very important point there that there's a lot of buyers for good assets. I will get to that point, but I do want to talk about Sombrero here first, and then I'll ask you about what else you can tell me about the other plans. But what would an asset have to look like from a grade and tonnage perspective in that part of Peru in order for it to be of interest to a potential buyer in this, again, in this setting?
Yeah, well, Sombrero specifically is blessed with exceptional infrastructure. There's mine power, arguably over top of the property, high tensile power lines. There's multiple sources of water. You access the property on a road, like a paved road, and it's very moderate terrain at only 3,900 meters elevation. I start with infrastructure because that will determine what your grade means. You can have all the grade in the world. If you're way out there and you don't have any power, water, roads, the cost economics are not going to work. In this case, it actually is one of the best parts of the project is that. Second part is it would be multiple pits over time, not one big earthquake or event. So socially, you have a better chance of building something, multiple different deposits, much like Las Bambas. It's three different pits that make it up. It's not one. One will pay for the other two, and it's a very, very profitable mining environment to get into. Number three, the grade is king, and Sombrero has the potential for incredibly good grades. So that's going to reduce the amount of rock you have to move. If we found 500 million tons of 1% copper, that would be an incredible achievement. That is extremely rare anywhere in the world right now. No one's finding that. 1 billion tons of 0.5%, still a very good number. We like to think we're going to be in the 0.5 to 1.5% copper based on our targeting and what skarns can deliver. That's our range that we're considering. We are barely scratching the edges of this system, and we're not even in the sweet parts of it yet. There's a lot to be discovered, a lot to figure out. But one thing that we've gotten for feedback from a lot of geologists that have been to site, majors, and everything else is the grade endowment is extremely impressive. Finding consecutive grade endowment consistently, it's just going to be a very drill intensive project to do that. But skarns, which is the big bulk of the first part of our targeting system, is predominantly carries that plus 1% grade around the world. They're some of the richest deposits that you can have, which is really, really encouraging. Porphyries, we do have porphyry targets. All we know about the porphyry target, it runs 20 meters at 0.6 on top of it, in a big, big sea of pyrite. There's a bit of copper right there. It's an epithermal telescoping system into base metal. And so you find a 0.6% copper head grade of porphyry, that would be outstanding as well. We are chasing grade. Grade is king, 500 million at 1% or better. This could deliver multi-billion tons of 0.5 over time if you were to average it all out. It does run analogs to Las Bambas and several of the other mines next door. And there's about 12 different targets that exist currently within the land package that we have of about 53,000 hectares. And so it's big, and everything there is big. The only thing missing is the drill holes in the grade to confirm what I'm saying. But that's what we're shooting for. We're shooting for multi-billion tons of 0.5 or better, specifically 500 million tons of 1% if we can in the early innings of drilling. Furasso and Nioc definitely meet that threshold with exposure, but there's going to be a lot of hidden discoveries that we're going to learn more about as we drill some of these more exposed ones here in the next round of drilling.
The only thing missing is the drill holes, and the grade is actually an important caveat there because you do compare this to Las Bambas. And I promised I'm going to ask about it, so I'm going to ask about it. Where does that comparison come from? I mean, where are you seeing that already? Given that those drill holes have not delivered, a Las Bambas comparison still.
Yeah, so Las Bambas was a lot of drill holes. It's a very large system, but it was outcropping. It was not covered predominantly by volcanics. Mm-hmm. We can measure the scale of the intrusions from surface through, even though there's cover. The cover layer that we're dealing with is 5 to 40 meters thick in most places, which is just enough to be too difficult to dig. You can't dig a 5-meter trench down. That would be pretty aggressive to get to it. As we drilled what we drilled, we were vectoring towards those sweeter parts of the system. If you take a section of Las Bambas and you look at what they hit in terms of smoke before they got into the actual system, it's identical to what we've drilled so far. So it's just a matter of where we are in the system. Is it leaning this way? Does it twist this way? Were you drilling over here? There's a lot of variabilities in skarns, and they're known to be difficult to find. So we have a predominantly buried skarn system, except for Furasso and Nioc. If we drilled, you take the holes that were drilled over at Furasso historically, the 8 holes, there's some incredible intercepts that fit well within Las Bambas. our smoke that we drilled in the first 8,000 meters, it fits right into the Las Bambas drill plan and what you've seen, what they've done in their highlights. If you look at their plan view and look around the skarn, one area has all the grade, the other areas are just smoke and sporadic. So we're seeing so many comparables there. Scale, the same rock formed at the same mineralizing event, which is Eocene event. We're seeing everything that's matching from that perspective. We just don't have the drill holes in the best parts, the sweet spots yet. We don't know under what's buried of if that's eventually going to give, but we can tell that we're in the system vectoring towards it. So this will take a lot of drilling, and going back to our strategy to add an asset or two that could deliver a lot of value in the meantime. Share price performance becomes more anti-dilutive because it's access to more capital. If we had it our way and permits were not a factor, we probably would have had 5 drills going right out the gate, and we would have drilled everything at once, and we would be Swiss cheesing Furasso and Nioc and a few other areas that we don't have access to yet, because there is that kind of mineralization sitting there, and anyone who's seen it would know that well. Like, you can walk across copper for a few kilometers on the property and still be on it, right? Just we can't drill it yet.
Other people have looked at Sombrero before, if I understand correctly. Why haven't some of the previous, I believe a couple of groups have looked at it over the years, and then herein resampled the core again in 2019, I think. But before that, why didn't anybody move this forward or discover it? Was it always a permits issue or the cover, a combination of all?
Social challenge. In the 80s, there was an event that took place here with the Shining Path, and this was a very social no-go area. Aceros came in there in 2000, and they were able to drill in 2013, and they were extracting iron from a small area in Furasso, a small pit they did. Then they stopped because they visually saw copper in the drill holes, which we later assayed those. Majors had come through the region. You have to go back and look at the cycles of the sector. You have to look at the grades or the price of copper at 59 cents in 2000, back then. And you have to look at this from that perspective. There was a perception that this was leakage by some of the majors that had been here previously. The 230 meters of 0.5% copper at Furasso on surface, or some of the other channel samples we've done, 100 plus meters, 1%, what have you. They're definitely not leakage. It's widespread mineralization. So we've debased or beat that speculation, right? What's happened since, we've had numerous CAs, we've had a very competitive corporate investing environment into the company, which Teck took at 50 cents last year on the IPO. We raised 19 million, or the listing financing. And we've met with several other majors since our last results came out. And there's some majors that like Sombrero better today after the first 8,000 meters, because we've actually confirmed the presence of a real skarn system that's mineralized with copper in it, right? No, we didn't hit the big holes that are going to get the market going and the obvious factors, but we're definitely the system, yes or no? It's yes, it's there. So it's in that point of what's the key magic to unlock the system. We think the drilling that we do at Furasso, as we drill down dip and follow that mineralization and expand that discovery, as we come down and go in towards the area where we drill, it's going to give us a massive amount of information that's going to quantify a lot of our geophysics and geochemistry work we've done today. And it'll give us a lot of orientation on the geometry, which is the hardest part of figuring out a skarn system.
Well, how are the community relationships there now, though? How's everything going? I know you've reported some channel samples recently from another part of the project, essentially.
Yeah.
Can you go and drill there, or do you still have to talk to the guys at site?
No. So we're working on our community access agreement there. It's halfway through, and so we're just working to complete that. In the last 12 months, we've provided 100 jobs in the area, predominantly with the main community, Huancasancos, where we do have a drill access agreement. We do that, plus we're doing Agradias, which is where we sponsor programs that are funded by the government and the community to bring in agriculture at that elevation, 3,900 meters. There was a big iron shortage in people's diets. Before we got on this interview, we talked about some more supplements and things we take to be healthy, but it was a notable factor. And so we brought in French cows, Australian lambs, fish farms, ways to reproduce their meat. And we were able to be the first people to do this in South America at the scale that we did it at and involve the government. So that collaboration it's not only really important for the communities, but it's important for us. It'll exceed well beyond it, and it changes the dynamic both with the government and permitting as well as it does with the locals. The new areas, obviously, the communities we're not working in yet, they have monitored. We have sensitized them to what we do. What is exploration to us, to you and I? We might know it's very straightforward, but when you go to these communities in the Andes that don't know anything about exploration geology, so we would take these guys to show them. This is a drill rig. This is what we're doing with drilling. This is how we reclaim it back to what it was. And there's a lot of first-time education there that's going on. So we've been educating, we've been preparing this whole region for a lot more expansion and exploration over time. There's been financial benefit from a community access agreement. There's been agricultural benefit for them, and there's been jobs. And so that's what the new communities looking at really want, is to see more of what happened in the first one, which will continue. And so our presence has been more valuable to them so far than it has been to our shareholders in terms of share price performance. But it will catch up because we'll be able to get access to these best areas here going forward as we advance our permits.
Well, on the topic of supplements, I do take copper and zinc, so I wouldn't mind if you find a big discovery. It's going to lower my cost of my supplements there at least. How long before you get those permits though? How long is it going to take you? What's an average thing? I think you did it. What did it take you first time? 6 months or something like that?
Yeah, so 6 months from filing was roughly what it took. There's a lot of prep work. We just announced that we completed an amended agreement with Aceros, which has Furaso and Nioc. That's our 80-20 joint venture that becomes an 80-20. They had some reclamation from the iron extraction they did. We took on that reclamation, and now we are just filing the paperwork to get the bigger permit in for 200 pads in the area that includes Furaso. As far as Nioc goes, it's a different permit we're applying for to try and get through there once we get community access. So I don't want to put a time frame on it because we've got incredible rapport. This is an expanding permit story in a region where we've got permits. So there's a lot of optimism that our time threshold could be reasonable, but there's a lot of it that's out of our control. And to be completely honest and maintain all credibility, we're going as fast as we possibly can, but we are at the mercy of the government. We're at the mercy of the permitting agencies, and we're at the respect and mercy of the communities. Everyone benefits if we move our permits forward, especially the communities, and that's what's important to us. So I think the more accurate time frame I'd be able to give would be in about 30 to 60 days from now. I'd be able to give you a better sense of timing, hoping for sometime in the first half of next year to have a drill in hand drilling on the project. Could that be end of first quarter? Could that be end of second quarter? Either one is possible. There's a lot of variance out of our control. We're not going to stamp the date at this time. We're just going to keep going at as fast as we can. That's respectful to all parties involved.
You did initially permit 49 holes, if I'm not mistaken. So you've got 29 left that you can go and drill. So irrespective of whether you get the other targets permitted, are you still going to drill those 29 holes?
No, the decision there is we could keep speculating, but if we don't hit and we're still vectoring in, what we've learned in the first round is our polygon actually limits us to where we really want to drill. So we're not a big fan to drill because of drilling. We stopped drilling after those 20 holes that we did because we wanted to preserve cash and be in a position to come back and hit the most obvious parts of the system. So we didn't hurt the project or hurt our abilities to finance, right? So what we did take away though was a lot of our permitting, our polygon where we could drill was right on the edge. And as we got closer towards it, those areas would get more and more prolific with the mineralization was increasing, everything was improving. We can't drill across that. So we're going to wait. I'd rather wait with cash on hand than spend it for the sake of spending it. And that's, kind of how I treat my own finances and how I think you should. Wait till you can drill the best parts of the system. And the first crack was worth it because we needed to know if the system was there and maybe we could hit those parts. Once we saw that they're vectoring out of our polygon or where we're allowed to drill, we paused. And now we have cash until July of next year.
Wait with cash on hand until you spend it is kind of a good lesson. I feel like I should call in my wife so you can tell her that as well. I think she might benefit from here. I will benefit from her hearing that. You have Tipicancha, Furazo, Corrales, Good Lucky, Nioc, a couple of other things in between. How do you rank them? What's the highest ranked target right now for you?
Well, I don't know which is the best target, but the most pronounced target is Furaso and Nioc because they have the most exposure. anything can happen. A lot of it's covered, as I mentioned. You can see it in some of our photos in our slide deck. So the big one could be Tipiconcha, it could be Antapampa, it could be Cello down south. We don't know. We just know we have indications that these are potentially massive targets. What we kind of categorize them as, all we can do right now, like Tipiconcha is 3 kilometers long. We know that the scale there is substantial if it's mineralized. And that's all we know with a little bit of mineralization on one part of the system. We do see evidence, small little windows, but we're more interested in, could that be a multi-kilometer long strike length, length of deposit, or is it only 200 meters, on a signature? If you look at Nioc, which is incredible target, it's 1.8 by 1.4 kilometers. That's a squared kind of look of the target. We've channeled a small part of that. We haven't trenched it there yet. There's a lot of other areas to channel where you can see outcropping mineralization. And that sits on top of like a cone of geophysical signals that are coming up. And that goes down from surface at least 700 meters to what you could read intelligently with the geophysical survey mag and IP that we have on the target. But that gives us depth. It gives us a lot of mineralization on top of a very strong signal. Signal doesn't mean you have copper and gold all the way down. It just means you have sulfides. And sulfides are generally what carries the root of the grade. Sulfides can be pyrite. Sulfides can be other elements can occur as well. But the fact that we have so much copper and gold on surface, it gives us a lot of confidence that that could be sulfide rich with the mineralization we're looking for.
Well, having gone through that permitting process before with the 49 holes, what's the probability we do actually see Nioc drilled next year?
I think it's very high, extremely high. Everything's moving in the right direction to be drilling everything we want to drill next year. It's a general statement because it's 12 months of the year. But yeah, everything's going well. There is an election in Peru next year. Dina Boluarte's done an incredible job since Castillo has left in keeping things in good order and a good thing. I think that Peru follows a lot of the US politics, as many countries do, right or left. We've noticed it. I mean, there's been a lot of presidents through Peru since we've been there, about 6 or 7. And the stability and the desire to expand the mining, ease of permitting and advancement of mining projects, it generally performs well with commodity prices. More pressure, the higher prices go. Everything's working in the favor for things to potentially get better, in my view.
Right. And so if we talk about what's the biggest challenge or the highest potential risk here for the project or for Coppernico as a whole between now and then that's just what permits and potential slowdowns, or how do you see that?
Yeah, so well, on any project in the world, it's always going to be your social relationship. We have not had an incident, a safety incident, since we've been there. We got there late 2015, and we're very proud of that. So we're very safe with how we operate there, and we're doing exploration, which is generally safer. That's number one. Number two, we've lived in the communities for almost a decade, about 9 years, and so we've gotten to know the people very well. They've gotten to know us well. We listen before we speak, and we try to compliment them in whichever ways make the most sense to be very balanced and fair. We have every desire to help them in many ways that we can and make things better. And they know our intentions are honest because we have almost a decade-long track record of doing that. So we've lived to our word. We've set a bar for the region, which I heard other majors are coming in and they're getting told, you got to go do what Sombrero's done here in terms of how we've worked our way. They got to know us and everything else. We're very proud of that in the sense that they like us enough to want us to be there. And so social is a risk, but we mitigate that with history, with good history with the community, with track record. And then the next one would be geopolitics. And for Peru to derail on its mining, we've seen extreme left presidents and right. We've seen both. And we've not seen mining stop in Peru since we've been there for about a decade. So I counter that as low. But again, our strategy is to expand ourselves into a more geopolitically favorable environment, just in case we need to mitigate. What if something unforeseen went wrong? Anything could happen. We want to have a reason to perform for our shareholders at any given time.
What is the ownership situation there exactly, or more specifically? Because I do see that some concession payments are stacking up on your balance sheet, as mentioned earlier. What's going on with those payments, and what's the ownership situation entail here?
Yeah, the only one of consequence would be the Aceros one. We own everything else. There's some small claims that are not that prioritized. They're under force majeure at the moment. So they're stacking, but they're in pause. They're not big enough to intimidate us. Even the Aceros payments are not big enough either. They're all reasonable in the world of what we're going for and what we might be able to achieve. We've extended the Aceros agreement through 2029, so we've got a lot more time before we need to complete our balance of expenditures. If we don't get access, we can rely on force majeure. So it's very fair. It's not, there's no underlying options here that are going to be punitive to the company on a dilutionary basis. We had 150,000 hectares. We scaled back to 100. Now we're at about 50. We're at, or 53. We're adding a few thousand hectares. We did find another very encouraging outcrop in the district that we had not seen before. So we're staking some smaller claims on some very robust new targets. So we'll end up with about 60,000 hectares, but that brings down our $500,000 spend to about 450,000 a year. So we're being very efficient and disciplined with our land position. Next June, which is the month that you have to do your claims each month, or you have to pay them each year, renew them, we will be likely considering optimizing our position one more time. It's not about how much land you have, it's about having the right land. That's our MO on it. And we're just making sure we have the best that we can in the region, and we don't carry a lot of land for the sake of being big landholders, because that wouldn't be a good use of our capital.
Mm-hmm. You said that infrastructure, you said that there's roads and power, potentially mining power there. You mentioned as well, so large lines essentially that you have there. What about water? How's the water infrastructure? How are the water rights in the communities, and also just in general in that part of Peru?
Yeah, there's multiple water sources nearby. We've had no issue getting water for drilling. We can pump it to our actual drill, or we can truck it a very short distance. So the water accessibility is great. In a commercial mining scenario, there is water nearby that could accommodate that, but that would become an agreement that we would have to develop with the communities. And as far as the water in this part of Peru and different parts of our large land position, what we have, we've seen water that's contaminated with natural exposed, sulfides, arsenic, and mercury, other metals. And so in exploration, I had this discussion with someone today, was in a lot of areas, even in the US, in Durango, Colorado, there's the Animas River. You can't eat fish out of it because there's runoff from the rocks that are very mineralized. There's a lot of times mining will provide a cleaner discharge water than exists currently from a lot of sulfide rock with arsenic or, other deleterious elements in them. So in the case of Peru here, there's multiple sources. We don't think there'd be any issue in a mining scenario. And there's plenty for the communities, plenty for the agriculture, which we support and we're encouraging, and plenty for a mining scenario. We can thumb suck or speculate on at this point that it's not going to be an issue. But as of right now, we're pumping water for the most part when we drill.
I have a magic credit card question here for you. It's something that I often ask, but if I gave you a credit card and it had a very specific limit to it, but the only condition is that you have to deliver a discovery of economic value for that budget, how much budget would you ask for on that credit card?
Oh, how much to spend to deliver the market known discovery for it? I would put my drills on Furaso and Nioc, where we're going to put them next. And I think we could do it to be a notable one. I'm not going to go through feasibility. I'm going to go through market performance awareness. It's an obvious discovery. I'd say probably need about 5 or 6 million US. That would be it.
How much do you have right now?
We have about 4.5 Canadian. So we don't have money to drill that. We have warrants at 30 cents. There's 4.5 million in warrants. Been offered a lot of financings down here. Not interested. Don't have to. Between now and when we say the F word again, you'll likely see a couple acquisitions. So a pretty significant build out to the portfolio. Not because these things are going to be cost punitive, but they're going to give a lot more optionality to the investors to participate in this rising commodity market. You're going to see me on the road a lot more, which has just started here on the back of Beaver Creek. I'm gone for the next 2 weeks in Europe, back to the US marketing, back to Europe marketing. And that's going to be talking about various catalysts that are not out there yet, but some that are in motion. A lot more surface sample staging, and when you cut channels like we did with a rock saw across rock that's sticking out of the ground, that's what we did. That's pretty significant, versus just taking rock that's floating on top of a target. So this is actually rock saw cut, but we're going to get a chance to get a lot more data like that from some of the more targets and stage the company properly. Commodity price, copper's, I think, was 460 spot a pound this morning. It's going in the right direction. So we're going to be in the final countdown of permits, likely see an acquisition or two, modest impact financially, but make us much more marketable, take down geopolitical risk, permitting risk, and put us with a drill in our hands at the latest end of this year, early next year, whether we're drilling north or south, and eventually drilling both. Goal would be to become a drill discovery company in this commodity bull run, and that's going to take capital. But I've been offered a lot more than we need to reveal the discovery at this stage. Just not ready to do it at this time. We've got to create some value back in the share price, and that comes from surface work, that comes from permit advancements, and it comes from potential acquisitions.
What is modest influence on your financial position, though? How much money would you be looking to put toward a new project? And I assume it'd be a combination of equity and cash. But yeah, what are you looking to spend on it?
I can't really say right now because I'm in the middle of it, and so I don't want to work against me or for me. But enough that I wouldn't need to do a financing right now, but not enough to put the company where it needs money overnight.
Was
You
this a
would need
G&A?
generally, we generally would need money to go drilling anywhere. There'd be a natural progression to go do that, but we're not far off those warrants that are in the money. They're held with some great shareholders, and if the business plan makes sense and we're scaling up and exercising those warrants, put us in a position to pull out a drill and start drilling while we wait for permits, that would be, I think, would be a very marketable event that would be received well from the market.
Hmm.
Outside of that, there is a lot of interest in one ownership announcement. I just want to clarify. Newmont actually owns 6% of the company. We thought they'd sold some, but they have 6%. I
Okay.
clarified that at Beaver Creek, and they're happy to be there with it because they've obviously got the Newcrest team because they took over Newcrest, which is quite well familiar with copper, and so everyone's paying attention. It's a gold copper system, so it works both sides of the tape. It works for base metal and precious metal explorers.
What do they really want for you though? Because it's Teck and Newmont that you have. What did you tell them first of all to get them over the line? What do they want for you? Teck is at 9.9. So talk to me about sort of the decision for them behind doing this in the first place.
Yeah, so Newmont took over Goldcorp, who gave Orin $37 million in a financing that we did with them when we made that mad push up at Committee Bay and try to go make the big gold discovery when Goldcorp was trying to find a big growth angle for themselves. And so they inherited the position and took a while for them to get into it technically. And then they finally did, and they now have a copper lens as well as a gold lens, so they can see the potential, and it's quite obvious at Sombrero. Tech was there in 2018 and 2019, and they went to the project back then. So they became very familiar with it early. And once it came to communities and permits, they were ready to invest. And that's what brought them over the line. But in both cases, the project brought them in. And it wasn't us. There was no magic meeting. There was no sales pitch that you can do. And this is something important to take away, even on my companies I'm involved in. I'm involved in 5 public companies, and 4 of the companies I'm involved in have corporate investors or corporate partners. And that's a real testament to the quality of projects we go for, right? That's not an easy thing to achieve. It's not done by being good at putting together a story and having potential. It's done by having the right assets, quality assets that could move the needle for bigger companies. And that's something we're extremely proud of in my career.
Hmm. Did he get any kind of ROFR or anything else related to the structure, I guess?
Yeah, straight equity investments. I mean, Newmont doesn't have rights, but they have a position because they inherited one. Their rights stayed with Fury, and so they don't. And then as far as tech goes, if a JV ever gets formed, if we bring in a partner, they would have a ROFR on a JV, but it's anyone else can buy. They have the right to match equity wise and maintain their 9.9%. There is interest out there right now from other corporates. It's just we don't need money today, and what's the point? We don't like our share price, and we think we can create a lot more value between now and when we say the financing word again.
Would you though? Would you go for an asset level deal, a JV, or anything else of the sorts?
No, that would be not this stage. To raise another 10 or 20 million, which would really unlock a lot of value beyond the 5 that I mentioned. It would it's well within our cards. We would like to drill 60 holes in this project before we even entertain a partnership. That was kind of our speculation based on a handful of our targets that we will get access to in the next 18 months. And so from that basis, that'll give us the full determination of where we would make that decision. And if things are performing well and our share price and our treasury is really strong, then there's no rush. We're really happy to take on the exploration risk because we feel it's extremely low in some of our targets and extremely mysterious in our other ones. And there's a lot of value that could be achieved here in the next 18, 24 months.
How much money are you going to spend in the meantime on G&A? You said you want to ramp up marketing a little bit. I came out at 260 Canadian on average per month as to what you spend on G&A in total. So 260,000 for the last reported 6 months. Where do you want to take it? What's kind of an upper limit for you for G&A?
Well, I mean, first off, like the infrastructure in Peru is not cheap, like to carry that project and to operate multi-jurisdiction does have a cost to it. I don't have a large salary. Like I said, I'm third or fourth paid person in the company. And so we don't have a big overhead. We do not have an office in Vancouver, but we do trade on the Toronto Stock Exchange and we're obviously US listed as well. So there is a certain admin that's quite heavy with the Canadian exchanges that we have to adhere to. That's one part. I'm a big fan of spending money on marketing if it's working and if you're doing things to move the company forward, because that will bring down the nominal increase in your marketing budget and give you access to more capital at better prices going forward. Again, I'm a shareholder first and I'm a CEO second. So whatever will get the share price to the next level. From that perspective, nothing egregious. I don't do these egregious marketing campaigns. I don't pay people, huge amounts to flash promote us or do that stuff. I believe in brick and mortar, shake hands if you can as much in person and just explain to people the multi levels that you could perform and give them a scope of the scale of what you're really going after. What I think has really been missed by the global investment community and recognized by some, but not by all, is how rare Sombrero is to have those kind of grades and the scale of these targets, to have multi targets like this, a pipeline of it. A lot of people ask me how I persevered this long with Sombrero, and I was saying on the back of Beaver Creek and a few of these conferences, every time I sit down with a major that's learned about the project, their reaction is what drives me to keep fighting and keep staying and keep going. And that's really important because that's an unbiased testament from somebody that generally doesn't own any shares and they have a much deeper technical reach to understand your project. So that's something that's really driven me and the team to keep going because we see it that way. But our Kool-Aid can always have vodka in it, as they say. You can spike your own Kool-Aid, you won't taste it. But when you see it on across the table from potential end suitors and you get the amount of activity we've gone, it makes it worthwhile and it gives you an extra step to go and persevere against all markets, which we've done.
My copper and zinc supplement doesn't go well with vodka, so I just do clean Kool-Aid. That treats me best when I'm doing interviews late at night, like now. But what are you marketing though when you go out there? I mean, you because you do essentially the best targets you have. You don't have proof that you're going to be able to drill them next year, even though you want and you assume that you are. So how do you make sure it's not promotion without proof? Essentially, what do you market when you go out there and you talk to these people, shake their hands in real life?
Well, first off, not a lot of people know the scope and scale of these targets. A lot of people aren't aware of some of the best channel samples for copper on surface over a big target that we just put out. A lot of people aren't aware of the holes at Furaso that confirm the third dimension already. A lot of people don't have that context in proper format. And why didn't we do it sooner? Because we didn't want to spend a huge amount in marketing until we drilled the first pass and knew whether we should go out and market or not. If the system was not present there and we didn't hit any skarn mineralization, we didn't see it, it would have been a real big head scratch and a different approach. But we also know more of what's coming next. And so we can stage our investors. It's really tough to put out a news release of good news or announce your permits when no one knows what you're going to drill and why those are important.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to go out and educate everybody. This is where we believe we'll have permits in a reasonable time frame. And this is what the outcomes we think based on the next pass of drilling. What could that $5 million achieve for the company? What kind of value, what kind of growth? It's an educational business, right? And my success taking Keegan to $9 or Keegan to 360 or Oren to $4 has always been about setting the stage. If you're going to host a concert and you're a new band wants to launch a concert, I want to get a stadium that could fill the Pink Floyd or or the Led Zeppelins of the world, the massive, massive stadium. If I don't have a stadium that big and it only fits 50 people, House of Blues style, I'm only going to get 50 people showing up to hear the good music, right? So my theory or my strategy in marketing has always been make sure you have the global audience. This could be a global significant discovery. Why not pursue a global audience so that if you make that discovery, the whole world can react to it when you make it? This is shareholder minded ways of marketing and building it out. This sitting down with you today is, and I don't know how big your reach is, but it's an honor and a pleasure to do this, because getting a little bit behind the CEO, getting a chance to see and understand where, when, and what at this stage of a 9-year or 9.5-year wait getting into the project, we might have 6 months left, maybe 8 months left. That's a small amount of time frame, and the speculation will build. The other reason why I'm going to go marketing is I'm going to acquire 1 or 2 more assets. And so I'm going to set the landscape for that and how that fits into this plan. So I'm moving forward with the company. Never sit still, always be moving forward. That's something I learned from Sean Boyd at Agnico Eagle. And so as I'm planning to do these things, I want to build an audience ready to participate and perform. 6 months is not a lot of time left to go and build the stage that this project deserves for the next round of drilling. That's how I feel in terms of how big the reach could be going forward.
Well, talking about marketing bans, you might want to try and get in touch with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I recently learned they sell up to 400 million bucks of tickets a year still, and like 3 of them are in their 60s, and the other one is like late 50s or something. So, and they've been playing since what, 80 something, right? So, and they still sell $400 million worth of tickets. So, still impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's again, that's good marketing, and big band fills big stadiums. So
Yeah.
this project deserves it, and couple things we're looking at could meet similar thresholds. So we just want to be out there to make sure everyone's following it.
But big G&A as well. I recently looked into this. That's my favorite band. Doesn't matter, but I looked into how much money they each make essentially, and how much they get to keep each year. And they don't get to keep as much. I mean, there's a big chunk that goes toward their G&A and promotion and everything. So yeah, what would that mean for you? Would it trying to fill the big stadium, would that double your G&A from 260 to 520? Is that reasonable?
No, 10% more, maybe 10 or 15. I mean, it's going to be me on the plane a lot. Something that I haven't done for some time, and in the way that I've done it in the past. And so, I have a lot of followers from around the world that have been shareholders for a long time, and a lot of people I haven't seen in a long time that are extremely great shareholders. And just from introducing or reintroducing the story, letting them know we're finally there at the threshold we were hoping to be at, and we have a few significant things we're working on that could really give upside. I've had some of the best bang for your buck in marketing in my career. I've spent next to nil, and I've had incredible performances in the past. And that's just driven by a lot of brick and mortar, in person, stuff like that, right? And so from that perspective, if anything, I'd adhere it with, if the market wasn't participating in the commodity cycle, if metals were not flying, if gold wasn't hitting record highs every day and copper wasn't starting to move, I'd be more reluctant to go out on a big marketing spend. I'd be more defensive. But as the market is picking up, it's going to give us access to a better share price, a better financing. I'll get my better chance for my warrants to come in, which is non-dilutive. It's existing dilutive way to finance the company. And I'll be able to create momentum in the company's share price versus waiting until we drill. Even if I had the cash to drill the $5 million today, if I wait till we drill to drill it, then I'll be like a lot of other companies that don't talk about their companies before, and I'd have a boring share price on good holes. And I don't want that. I want the whole world to see it, to feel the tension. I do have a concern that I'm also marketing against. Is I'm very concerned based on the level of corporate interest that we've seen. I'm very concerned on going early, that a bid could come earlier than we're ready. And this has been half my career pursuing this. The asset is harder than the share price performance, but if a bid came early to us, we're going to have to address it, right? And so I don't own enough shares to block it. And hopefully I get into a position where I could own more to be in that sense. But I do have that concern. And so to perform well against the competitive environment, if the discovery is there, the more you market, the better defense you have. And again, these are not huge undertakings. These are branding, a lot of networking in person, and just reaching more and more people that have not yet heard the story in this new market where commodities are starting to really fly.
What's the biggest criticism of Copernico that you get once you sit down with these people and talk to them?
The time for permits is number one thing that people, and it's not a criticism to us, it's a criticism to the fundamentals of working in Peru. And it's one thing I hope the Peruvian government can improve from where it is considerably. The challenge is they like to permit exploration as if it was a mine. You do extensive environmental studies and layers and layers and layers. We figure out social and one of the more challenging parts of Peru, but we still have to go through this rigorous process. And we're not using any chemicals. We're in moderate terrain. We're not digging canyons. We're not putting safety as a risk, but it's still a long process. And I think that could be streamlined a lot more at the exploration stage. And that's the one thing that people push back on is the permit timelines. That's the only deterrent until you get them. Then it's interesting. Just like we've seen another company you mentioned here before the call. They finally got them and it'll be exciting now.
Yet you're still confident that you're going to get them and you're going to see, Nioc drilled next year. How come? What is needed really to push back on that criticism? What is needed for you to get those permits? And why are you confident that you'll actually get them?
Well, I can only say so much here because of the sensitivity of that process. And I don't want to speak ahead of certain things and whether it's the community or the government where that's going. But 10 years experience in Peru, having gotten permits last year, it gives me a lot of confidence that we're on the right path to get these permits. I think we're just going to keep being great citizens. We have the jobs waiting for them. There's a lot of capital that goes to the community if we do get them. And just experience the last 10 years has been a really good track record to realize what it's like. And we got permits in 2018 through 2020 to do surface work. We got a community agreement. It expired in COVID. We came back. It took us a few years after COVID to get the new social access and get the drill permits. When we applied for those drill permits at Huancasancos, they happened timely without any issue. We have an incredible team. So I'd say my team in Peru is really good, and they're very well connected with the government permitting agencies. The relationship with the communities is really good, and we've got 10 years of experience being in country, so we can speculate that we'll get those next year. How fast or how long, we don't know. As I said before, it's just, it's the quicker we can do it, the quicker everyone gets jobs, the quicker the community gets money, the quicker, things improve a lot in the environment we're trying to work in. So there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that are very positive towards getting those permits. And I'll stay a bit confidential for the time being, but things are going in the right direction for sure.
We're over time. I know I'm going over time of what you had promised me here, Ivan, but what am I forgetting to ask you here? What did you come here hoping to talk about that I failed to bring up?
I think we've covered all. I mean, you've asked some extremely good questions, and I respect them a lot. I like the harder questions even better than the easy ones. I think the only question I can't answer for you today that I wish I had the answers to is timing. So in the case of that, we are just starting to get out and start to tell the story because we think we're on the home stretch. The next 6 to 8 months, I think, is a reasonable time frame. And there's a lot of other news that's going to come. So we have a pretty good news list coming of multiple news releases between now and then. And so that's complemented with the perfect market. You've asked me everything for now, and thank you very much. Appreciate you very much.
Thank you for your time as well. For people listening, I'm hoping Ivan and I will be back sometime soon. So if whatever I'm forgetting, please let me know in the comments, send me an email, whatever works, and then I'll make sure to ask it in our next interview. But Ivan, again, thank you so much for doing this, and hopefully speak to you again soon.
Thank you so much.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they are necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know, and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias, and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias. Again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should under no circumstances be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. So unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find the company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."